Here's your puzzle of the week. It is white to play and win. If you want to look at this online, solve the puzzle interactively on a graphics board, then do click through to chesspuzzle.net. I'll put the link down below and there's a graphics board there. Or you could go old school and get out a chess set and set the pieces up and try to solve it with a real board and pieces. So let me put this one in context. So it's Babazada against Suleymanli. White is an IM. This was played in the Baku Open in 2024. So you can see that this pawn on f7 is just one step from queening, but the rook is in the way and black threatens simply to play rook takes pawn, and that'll be a draw. So somehow white has to solve the problem of how to save that pawn and maybe even promote the pawn. So white to play, what do you do? There's only one way to do it. Are you ready? Well, bishop e5 is not the solution because the king moves out of check. The rook is attacked. Of course, if the rook moves away, then the pawn can simply be captured. And if bishop d6, then the king just steps back to f6. And this is going to be a draw. I mean, it'll just end in perpetual, or if the rook moves, then king takes pawn. It's a draw. Rook and bishop against rook, it's a draw. Returning to the starting position. Only one way to win. Bishop g5 check. There's a nice move. Okay, so we need to look at all the options that black has. So first of all, what about king takes? Well, that's easy. Then rook g8 check, and then white gets a queen. Okay, so that's not on. Now if, let me see, king g6, then the king just steps in, protects the pawn, and the rook steps out of the way, the pawn goes through, so that's not on. King f5, well, in that case, that pawn can be taken, and actually white is winning easily. So if rook takes bishop, then the rook steps out of the way, the pawn promotes, or if rook g7, then king d6, and then king e7, supporting the pawn. So bishop g5 was played in the game, and black played king g7. So here is where white found a very neat idea. So as before, if the rook moves, then king takes pawn and it'll be a draw. But white found king e6. Very nice. Giving up the rook. This didn't happen actually. And then white gets a new queen and that wins. In fact, in the game, black played rook h8 and must have resigned before white moved. Of course, rook takes rook is very easy. King takes rook and then f8 queen. So there we go, just coming back to the beginning. The only move to win is bishop g5 check. If you want to check out the solution on chesspuzzle.net, then do click through on the link below.